Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and today, Mir Hashem, we will complete Nun Vav Amud Beis, and hopefully Nun Zayin Amud Aleph as well. So we are continuing to learn Hilchos Netillas Yadayim. We pick up today on Nun Vav Amud Beis. We began Siman Kuf Samach Beis, a very complex Siman. We began it in the last shir, and in the last shir, we really just read the first couple of words of the Siman in the Shulchan Aruch. And we did Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Aleph, which is the Mishnah Berurah's Hakdama to this very complex Siman. And we did a short little Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Beis. We're up to Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Gimel on Nun Vav Amud Beis. But before we could dive back into the Mishnah Berurah, it's really, especially since we had not only a weekend, a Shabbos, but we had yesterday as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to say shir yesterday. But we had quite a break between the last time we picked this up and now, so we just have to give a little bit of a recap and remind ourselves of the topic at hand. So if you look over here on Nun Vav Amud Beis, Siman Kuf Samach Beis, you see that the title of Siman Kuf Samach Beis is Hagbah, lifting up the hands, V'shifshaf hayadayim, and rubbing the hands, benetila, when you do Netilas Yadayim, uba yud seifim, and here we have 10 seifim. And the topic that we've been discussing so far here in Siman Kuf Samach Beis is the first topic mentioned by the Mechaber in the title, which is Hagbah, the need to lift up or elevate the hands at some point during Netilas Yadayim. So let's remember what we learned in the Hakdama. Why should you have to elevate your hands during Netilas Yadayim? So from 30,000 feet, here's what the issue is. Let's remember, when you wash the Netilas Yadayim, your hands, they're Stam Yadayim, they're unwashed hands. So Stam Yadayim Ashniyos L'Tuma, the hands are considered to be contaminated with second degree Tuma. In order to get rid of this Tuma, we wash the Netilas Yadayim from a keli. The keli has to be a keli that's machzik a revi'is. It has to be a keli that can hold a revi'is of mayim, because we give a revi'is of mayim a shtikal din of a mikveh. We know that a revi'is of mayim has the ability to bring about tahara. We learn that out from the halachas of tfilas kelim. We know that by tfilas kelim, if you have a revi'is of mayim and you have a tiny keli, and it's a keli that could be fully submerged in a revi'is of mayim, then midaraisa you could tovel a tiny keli, even a revi'is of mayim. So we have a precedent by the halachas of tfilas kelim that a revi'is of mayim has a din of a mikveh. So in order to bring tahara to the hands, we start off with a kli that's machzik revi'is. We need a keli that can hold a revi'is, and we have a revi'is of mayim inside that keli. And now we go ahead and we begin to do Netilas Yadayim. We've learned that by Netilas Yadayim, there's mayim rishonim, there's the first water that you pour, and then there's mayim shniyim, there's the second water that you pour. Now, the job of the mayim rishonim and the job of the mayim shniyim are two different jobs. The job of the mayim rishonim is to be metaher the yadayim. The job of the mayim rishonim is to remove the tumah from the hands. So you begin to Netilas Yadayim, you take a keli, you do a pour onto your right hand. You have now taken the tumah off of the hand, but the tumah is still extant, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Both of them seem to be linguistically acceptable. So the tumah is still there. Where is the tumah? The tumah is now in the mayim. So again, you poured mayim rishonim and you took the tumah off the hand, but now you have the remnants of those mayim rishonim. Your hand is wet from the mayim rishonim, and that mayim rishonim that's left on your hand has tumah in it. How do you get rid of that tumah? The way you get rid of that tumah is by the second pour of the mayim shniyim. The job of the mayim shniyim is to be metaher the mayim rishonim. Once you complete mayim rishonim and then mayim shniyim, there's no more tumah, and everything is fine. Okay, what does that have to do with our discussion here of elevating the hands? The problem, the chash that we have, that requires that you elevate your hands is the following chash. The chash is like this. According to most shitas, when you wash the Netillas Yadayim, you have to wash ad haperik. You have to wash until the wrist. Okay, now, let's say you take your Netillas Yadayim keli and you give a nice, healthy pour of water onto your hands. Now, let's not get into, for the moment, the question of revi'is or more than a revi'is, but you gave a nice pour of water onto your hands. Okay, so the water goes on your hand, and it takes the tumah off the hand. Now, let's remember, Medine Netillas Yadayim, when the Chazal said that you have to wash the Netillas Yadayim because stam yadayim are shniyos l'tumah, that's a din on the yad. The yad has second-degree tumah. The zraya, the forearm, does not have second-degree tumah. There's no gzeira on the forearm that the forearm has second-degree tumah. So we're not worried about tumah that's on the forearm. We're only worried about tumah that's on the hand. But now, you poured mayim rishainim onto the hand. Now let's say you have some mayim rishainim that landed right over here. It landed on the palm of your hand, very close to your wrist. Okay? Now, let's say that water landed over here and it picked up tumah. Now, after you washed, that water flows back and it flows above your wrist. Ooh, now you have some water above your wrist that is tummy. Okay, so you washed mayim rishainim. A little bit of the tamei mayim rishainim that picked up tumah from the hand flowed back above the wrist. So now you have tamei mayim rishainim over here on your wrist. All right, now you're going to wash mayim shniyim. All right, you wash mayim shniyim. The mayim shniyim is mitaher all of the leftover mayim rishainim that are on your hands. Now here's the problem. Even if you wash a very nice healthy pour of mayim shniyim, and the mayim shniyim water goes up over your wrist, and it hits the tamei mayim rishainim water that flowed back onto your wrist, that mayim rishainim water will not become tahar. You know why? Because the ability of the mayim shniyim water to be mitar the mayim rishainim is only true on the hand. It's only at play on the hand. That's the only place that the mayim shniyim have the koyach to be mitar mayim rishainim. Why? Because all of the dinim of Netillas Yadayim, the jurisdiction, if you will, of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim is on the hands. The jurisdiction of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim does not extend to the zraya. It doesn't extend to the forearm. So therefore, if you have tamei mayim rishainim water on your forearm and you pour mayim shniyim on it, it's not going to become tar. So now, let's again analyze this. You poured mayim rishainim, some tamei mayim rishainim water that picked up tumah from the hand. You see, if you poured the mayim rishainim water directly onto your forearm, it's not going to pick up any tumah. Because again, the jurisdiction of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim ends right over here at the wrist. So mayim rishainim is not going to pick up tumah from the zraya. But if you poured mayim rishainim water on the hand, and then it flowed back over the wrist, now you have mayim rishainim water on your forearm. Okay, now you go ahead and you wash mayim shniyim. Okay, the mayim shniyim are mitar all the leftover mayim rishainim on your hand. Now you put your hand down. Now the leftover tamei mayim rishainim water that had gone up over your wrist could flow back onto your hand. And not only is it a problem that you're going to have tamei mayim rishainim on your hand, that tamei mayim rishainim is going to be mitamei your hand, which is very fascinating. Think about what I just said. You have mayim rishainim water that picked up tumah from your hand. It flowed back onto your wrist. If it now flows back onto your hand, it's going to be metame your hand. What's fascinating about that is mayim rishonim usually doesn't have the koyach to be metame your hand. If mayim rishonim had the koyach to be metame your hand, Netillas Yadayim would be a vicious, never-ending cycle. You would pour mayim rishonim onto your hand. The mayim rishonim would take the tumah off your hand. The tumah would go into the mayim rishonim and then immediately go back into the hand and be metame the hand. So there would be no way to wash Netillas Yadayim. Elamai, normally when you wash mayim rishonim, the tumah comes off the hand, goes into the water, stays in the water. It's not metame the hand. But if the water flows off your hand and it flows out of the jurisdiction of the Netillas Yadayim, if the mayim rishonim flows off your hand and it goes onto your zraya, and then it flows back onto the hand from the zraya, that's mayim tameim sheba'u mimakayim acher. It's tamei water that came from somewhere else, and it has the koyach to be metame your hand. You know what that would be like? That would be like if somebody washes mayim rishonim, then he touches the wall, and he makes the wall wet. And then he goes ahead and he touches the wall again. That mayim rishonim that's tamei is going to be metame the hand, because it's tamei mayim rishonim water that's coming from somewhere else. That could be metame your hand. So again, 30,000 feet. I'm leaving some of the complications out. We'll get to them as we go. The kshash over here is you're going to wash mayim rishonim. Some of the mayim rishonim that becomes tamei from your hand, mayim rishonim that landed on your hand, is going to flow back onto your wrist. Now you're going to wash mayim shneim. After you wash mayim shneim, that tamei mayim rishonim water that flowed up over your wrist is going to flow back down onto your hand and be metame your hand. Now what are you going to do? You're going to go dry your hand? It's very nice that you dry your hand, but your hand's tamei. You got rid of the tamei mayim rishonim that flowed back onto your hand, but it already made your hand tamei. So now your hand is tamei the same way it was before you started the Netillas Yadayim. In order to take away from this problem, what the Halacha says is you have to be magbia your hand. You have to elevate your hand. When do you elevate your hand? So me'ikar adin, the point at which you have to elevate your hand is immediately after you wash mayim shneim. So do the math. You washed mayim rishonim. The kshash is some tamei mayim rishonim water flowed over your wrist. You washed mayim shneim, right? The mayim shneim was mitar all the mayim rishonim on your hand, but you still have you might have problematic mayim rishonim that's tamei over your wrist. So now elevate your hand. Elevate your hand and dry your hands, including above your wrist. Dry everything. Now there's no more mayim rishonim. That's tameim. And now you're okay. So that's the problem, and that's the solution. So again, when do you have to elevate your hand? According to this, you need to elevate your hand immediately after washing mayim shneim. So let's take a look at Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Gimel on Nun Vav Amud Beis. The Mechaber had said, Hadnoitel, somebody who watches the Netillas Yadayim, Tzarech Lagbia Yadav, he has to elevate his hands. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Gimel, Lagbia Yadav, he must elevate his hands when Tekef Achar Mayim Shneim, immediately after washing mayim shneim, ad haniguv, until you complete drying your hands, including drying the area over your wrist, if it got wet. And why are we doing this? Deshema yatsu mayim rishonim, because maybe some of the mayim rishonim, koydem sheniten alei mayim shneim, maybe some of the mayim rishonim that went onto your hand and picked up tumah from your hand, before you poured mayim shneim on it, maybe it went chutz laperik. Maybe it traveled above your wrist. V'hein tameim mikvar, And that mayim rishonim is already tamei, shekiblu tuma al yadei hayodayim. It was makabel tuma from the hand when it landed on the hand. Remember, if we're not worried about mayim that originally landed above your wrist, water that originally lands above your wrist is not tamei, because above your wrist is not tamei. So we're worried about water, mayim rishonim water that went on your hand, picked up tuma, and then flowed back. Va'achar mayim shniyim, and maybe now, after you wash the mayim shniyim, yerdu lamata, now that water will flow back onto your hand, v'yatamu es yadayim, and it will make the hands tamei again, because that's mayim tameim abba mimakam acher, and that has the koyach to be matami the yadayim. Okay, now says the Mishnah Berurah, and the truth is, lechatchila, says the Mishnah Berurah, v'toiv li zaher, it would be good to be careful, afilu be'es hanesina. The Mishnah Berurah just said that really it's enough to elevate your hand after you washed the mayim shniyim. You washed the mayim shniyim, now elevate your hand so that the problematic tamei mayim rishonim above your wrist shouldn't flow back down onto your hand. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, in reality, it would be good to be careful to elevate your hand already when you're washing the mayim shniyim. Not immediately after washing the mayim shniyim, but even while you're washing the mayim shniyim. Why is that? So the Sharitzia, the Chavetz Chaim, writes in the Sharitzia and Ois Tes. He says like this. He says, really, I told you that you don't have to elevate your hand until after washing mayim shniyim. But in reality, it's good to it's good to elevate your hand while you're washing the mayim shniyim. Why? Because maybe what will happen is like this. Maybe if you have your hand down when you're washing mayim shniyim, maybe the mayim shniyim will land on your hand, and immediately after the mayim shniyim lands on the hand, the tamei mayim rishonim will flow back onto the mayim shniyim. Now, the same way the mayim harishonim that's tamei above your wrist has the koyach to be matame your hand, it also has the koyach to be matame the mayim shniyim. So don't take the risk. Don't take the risk and wait to elevate your hand until after you wash the mayim shniyim. That's assuming that the mayim rishonim that's problematic is going to remain over your wrist until after you finish washing the mayim shniyim. But what if it flows back onto your hand as you're washing the mayim shniyim? Or immediately after the mayim shniyim lands on your hand? Then the mayim rishonim will flow back down and it'll be matame the mayim shniyim. So the best thing, he says, would be wash the mayim harishonim, and then when you're ready to wash the mayim shniyim, elevate your hand and wash the mayim shniyim, and you'll be matar all the water on your hand, and then do the niguv, and then dry off your hand. Now, I should just let you know, by the way, because many of you are already worrying about this, and you're thinking about the way you wash the Netillas Yadayim. I got to elevate my hand, and when am I going to elevate? We'll see that according to our minig, most of this is not nogea. Okay, now, so the Mishnah Berurah said here, "V'toiv lizar afilu be'es hanesina gufa." It would be good to be careful even when you're pouring the mayim shniyim, liyos yadav bagba, that your hand will already be elevated. Now comes a clincher. Now says the Mishnah Berurah like this. One thing I didn't mention yet in this shir that was already mentioned in the previous shir in the Hakdama, and that is that we learned in the end of Siman Samach Aleph that there are two shitas regarding until where you have to wash the Netillas Yadayim. We have one shita, and that's the shita that we paskin like, that we're noyeg like, which is that you wash the Netillas Yadayim ad haperek. There's another shita, which the Beis Yosef says is shita sarajba, There's a Shitas Rashba that says that you only have to wash the Netillas Yadayim until the knuckles. You don't have to wash the palm. You only have to wash ad kishrei etzba'osav, until where the fingers connect to the palm, until the knuckles. Now, that makes a difference in the severity of the chashash that we're dealing with. Why is that? Well, let's again, this is all halachic math. We just have to do the math. We've already explained over and over again what the chashash is over here, according to our minig that we wash ad haperek. If we wash ad haperek, so the problem is water from mayim rishonim might have hit the hand, become tamei, and then gone over the wrist, and then it might flow back. And I said, if the water landed on above the wrist originally, it's okay. It doesn't pick up tumah. You can only pick up tumah from the hand. You can't pick up tumah from the zraya. Now let's go to the world of the Rashba. In the world of the Rashba, you're only mechuyev to wash the Netillas Yadayim from the kishrei etzba'osav, from the knuckles, until the fingertips. You're not mechuyev to wash over here. But even the Rashba agrees that stam yodayim ashniyos l'tumah, and that halacha applies to the palm of the hand as well. He doesn't require you to wash the Netillas Yadayim on the palm of the hand, ostensibly because you handle your food with your fingers. You don't handle your food with your palm. You handle the food with your fingers. So you need to wash the Netillas Yadayim from the kishrei etzba'osav to the fingertips. But the Rashba agrees that the palm of the hand is stam yadayim shniyos l'tumah. Now, again, why does this all matter? Let's play out the chashash and how the Rashba would learn pshat in the Brisa in Saita. Remember, the source that you have to elevate your hands is a Brisa in Saita. So it has to work according to the Rashba, same way it has to work according to the other Rishonim. According to the Rashba, the chashash is a much more serious chashash. For one thing, according to us that we wash ad haperek, right? Ad haperek, it's quite easy to focus to wash the hands ad haperek. And even if you overwash, even if you pour a lot of water on your hands and some of the water goes beyond the wrist onto the forearm, that water can't pick up tumah from the forearm because the forearm is not the yad. The forearm is not tamei. So what's the chashash? The chashash isn't that you're going to overwash your hand, wash onto the forearm, and then that's going to flow back. That's not a problem. That's not tamei. The chashash is only that you're going to wash the hand. From the hand, it's going to flow back onto the wrist, and then it's going to flow back after the mayim shniyim. If it flows back before the mayim shniyim, it's not a problem. So again, the first thing that has to go wrong, according to our minig, the first thing that has to go wrong is that water has to flow from the hand above the wrist. The second thing that has to go wrong is that water has to flow back onto the hand. But not only that, it has to flow back onto the hand after mayim shniyim. Because if it flows back onto the hand before mayim shniyim, well, if it's on the hand when you pour the mayim shniyim will be matarit. So that wouldn't be a problem. So in order to have a problem, what do you need? You need that you washed your hand, water went back onto your wrist, flowed above your wrist, and then that water flowed back from above the wrist back to the hand after mayim shniyim. But now let's look at it in the world of the Rashba. In the world of the Rashba, we are only mechuyev to wash ad kishrei etzba'osav, right? How easy is it to mamish be mitzamtzim that you're only going to pour water ad kishrei etzba'osav and not a drop of water is going to go onto your palm? It's come out impossible. Now, if you overwashed and water went onto your palm, it picked up tumah. Because even according to the Rashba, the palm is tamei. So if you're overwashed at all, you're going to have Tamei Mayim Rishonim on your palm, right? So the first problem that we have to worry about is kemat not shaykh, that it shouldn't happen. Of course it's going to happen. You're going to get Mayim Rishonim onto the palm of your hand. That's Tamei. The second thing that has to happen is that it has to flow back onto the fingers, and I guess it has to flow back onto the fingers. It has to flow back onto the fingers after Mayim Shneim. But definitely, it's much easier for this to take place. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, this that I just told you, that according to our minig, where we wash until the perek, I told you that me'ikar adin, it's enough to elevate your hand after you wash the Mayim Shneim, just to make sure that the water doesn't flow back after the Mayim Shneim. But I said, toiv li zaher, it would be good to be careful to elevate your hand even while you're washing the Mayim Shneim. Because if you don't elevate your hand while you're washing the Mayim Shneim, maybe some water will flow back onto the Mayim Shneim and make them tamei. Says the Mishnah Berurah, but according to the Rashba, you must elevate your hand before you wash the Mayim Shneim. You know why? Because according to the Rashba, what happens if you keep your hand down when you wash the Mayim Shneim? If you keep your hand down when you wash the Mayim Shneim, what happens if you overwash when you wash the Mayim Shneim, and some of the Mayim Shneim goes onto the palm of your hand, but not only does it go onto the palm of your hand, it goes beyond where the Mayim Rishonim went onto the palm of your hand. Guess what's going to happen? That Mayim Shneim is now going to act as Mayim Rishonim. It's going to pick up Tumah from the hand, and if it flows back onto your fingers, you're done. No Netillas Yadayim. Your hands are tummy. Again, according to the Rashba, play this out according to the Rashba, you're only mechuyev to wash at Kishrei Etz B'Osav. It's almost impossible to wash almost into the Kishrei Etz B'Osav. So when you wash Mayim Rishonim, a certain amount of the Mayim Rishonim is going to go beyond the Kishrei Etz B'Osav, and it's going to go onto your hand. Now you're going to go wash Mayim Shneim. Okay, so when you wash Mayim Shneim, if the Mayim Shneim goes wherever the Mayim Rishonim went, you're okay. The Mayim Shneim is going to be metaher the Mayim Rishonim. But what happens if the Mayim Shneim, let's say, for argument's sake, let's say that the Mayim Rishonim went until here. See where my ruler is? Let's say the Mayim Rishonim went till there. But then the Mayim Shneim go till here. Well, if the Mayim Shneim go till here, then from here to here, that Mayim Shneim is not Mayim Shneim. It's Mayim Rishonim. It's the first water that's hitting the hand, and it picks up Tumah from the hand. Now, if your hand is positioned down, and that Mayim Shneim flows back onto your fingertips, it's going to be Matama your hands. So therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, that according to the Rashba, you must elevate your hand before you wash Mayim Shneim to make sure that none of the Mayim Shneim could possibly flow back onto your hands. See how intense this is? So that's why the Mishnah Berurah says, Uladas HaRashba, according to the Rashba, Hamuva Bebeis Yosef, who's brought down by the Beis Yosef, who says that we only have to wash the Netillas Yadayim ad Kishrei Etz B'Osav until the knuckles, but he agrees that the whole hand is Stam Yadayim Shiyas L'Tumah, Tzarech Midina Lizar Bazeh. Me'ikar Adin, you have to make sure to elevate the hands before you wash the Mayim Shneim. V'hinei, the Mishnah Berurah says, Ef Shalakai Mitzvah Hakbas Yadav, it's impossible to fulfill this requirement of lifting up your hands, unless you have somebody else to wash your hands for you. If you have somebody else to wash your hands for you, so it's very simple. You'll hold your hands, let's say like this, when he washes Mayim Rishonim, and then by Mayim Shneim, you'll lift your hands up and it'll pull water. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, you can't do that if you're washing alone. Why not? He tells you why not. Because he says, because if you're washing Netillas Yadayim by yourself, you're going to put your hand down. You're washing with a keli, right? So you take the keli in your left hand, you pour twice onto your right hand, then you put the keli down. Now you take your right hand that you just washed and you put your hand down to go pick up the keli. So you're putting your hand down. You're putting your hand down, water could flow back. So if you're washing by yourself, you can't do this. You can only do this if you have somebody else. So what do you do if you're washing by yourself? So the Mishnah Berurah says, if you don't have another person, Yitome revi'is I'll call yad. The answer is, use at least a revi'is of mayim, somewhere between 3.5 and 5 ounces. Use a revi'is of mayim on each hand. Because if you wash with the revi'is at one time, ain't tzarich lach b'ayadav. There's no need to lift up your hands, like we're going to learn later. Because remember what we keep on saying. All of this is only nogea if you're washing with less than a revi'is. When you wash with less than a revi'is, the mayim rishonim picks up tumah from the hand. But if you wash with a revi'is, as soon as the revi'is of mayim hits your hand, the tumah vanishes. The tumah goes poof, and there is no tumah anymore. So the mayim rishonim aren't tumah. So you wash with a revi'is, you have no problem. So don't skimp, Rabbi say. When you wash the Netillas Yadayim, fill up a nice big kais, give a nice big healthy pour, and then you got no issues. On the pressing circumstances, if you don't have that much water, you could use the eitzah that we're going to see soon in the words of the Ramah. Where the Ramah says another thing you could do is keep your hand down all the time. It's going to come out from the Mechaber that really this whole chash is only if you had your hand up when you washed mayim rishonim, so that the tamei mayim rishonim was able to hit your hand and then flow back over your wrist. And then after you washed mayim shneim, you put your hand down. So now it could flow back down onto the hand. But says the Ramah, if you keep your hand down the whole time, so you wash from the wrist and down, you never have a problem of water traveling up from the hand over the wrist and then traveling down. Just keep your hands down the whole time. Okay. Let's go a little bit further. I'm not going to get nearly as much done as I hoped, and my voice is already starting to give out at me, but let's go a little bit weiter. So if you look back at the words of the Shulchan Aruch here on the Nvav Beis, the Mechaber said, Hanoitel tzarich lach b'yadav, says the Ramah. What does it mean you have to elevate your hands? Dahainu roshei etzba'osav. It means the fingertips lamarla. You have to elevate the fingertips up. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, roshei etzba'osav. These are very funny words. Why did the Ramah say? Why did the Ramah put this in? I mean, the Mechaber said you have to lift up your hands. Says the Ramah, what does it mean you have to lift up your hands? It means you have to lift up your fingertips. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if you're going to take the Ramah at face value, sounds like you only have to lift your fingertips. You don't have to lift your whole hand. Just lift your hands could kind of be positioned down, but lift your fingertips. So says the Mishnah Berurah, this makes sense according to the Shitas HaRashba, that holds that you only have to wash your fingertips. So he's telling you now, lift up your fingertips so that no problematic water from the hand should flow back onto the fingertips. But we who paskin that you wash until the wrist, you have to lift up the whole hand. Okay, Dirshu, there are those that say that the Ramah is not being so persnickety. When the Ramah says that you lift up roshei etzba'osav, he means the whole hand. He means that the fingertips point up, which means the whole hand is up. V'yesha perishu gam kavanas v'yesha place of kenu shemagbiya kula. You're lifting the whole hand. The befarish oifen hagba. The Ramah is saying how you lift up your hand. Ta'inu shirash has place of lamaila. The fingertip should be pointing up. V'akaf v'azraya lamata, and the palm and the forearm are lower down. Okay, I'm going to stop over here. Mirz Hashem, the next year we'll pick up from the top line here in the Shulchan Aruch on Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, and from Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cut and Hang. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe should say, Yeshua's first parnasset shtuchim to all that we need. The Rebbe should have Rachmanas on Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael on the Sunnah Batzara Ba'ashivya Haim the Bein Bayam or Bein Bayabasha Hamaki Berachem Aleim Yitziyam Yitzara Levacha Me'afela La'ira Mishiba Legeula Hash L'Bagalo Zman Kariv Ne'emar Amen. Be well.